Gail sat in class, staring off into space as usual. She wasn't interested in class or much of anything else. She was failing ninth grade English for the second time, and she didn't seem to care. Her black and white shoes tapped a slow, boring tune on the desk of the boy in front of her until he turned around and gave her a nasty look. She paused and regarded him for a second or two with her big brown eyes, then continued her tapping, this time on the floor. Mesa Williams was a dark-haired girl who sat behind Gail. Mesa whispered, "Chick, if you don't want to learn or do the assignment, go to sleep like I do, but you need to chill with all that tapping crap." Susan Reynard only glanced at Gail, the kind of glance one might give a petty annoyance. Gail had no friends at Germantown High, and she knew it. Had she not been tapping her feet, they would have gotten on to her about something else. She propped her elbow on the desk and placed her chin in the palm of her hand and stared at the ceiling. Surely, I can't get in trouble now, she thought to herself. Then she noticed Mrs. Brown looking at her from across the room. Mrs. Brown was a 24-year-old, second-year English teacher. Although she tried to hide her features behind beehive hairdo, horn-rimmed glasses, and loose-fitting clothes, she was pretty enough to be a professional model. Standing about 5'6", she was just 2 inches taller than Gail. Mrs. Brown got up from her desk and started walking around the room. Every now and then, she would pause at a student's desk and give him or her a compliment. "You did that very well." Then she would go to the next, giving each student individual help or encouragement. Gail took out her English book and opened it. "Glenn, what page?" she whispered to the boy in front of her. "You should have been paying attention," was his only reply. "Mesa, Susan," there was the sound of a plea in her voice as she looked around for someone to tell her which page the assignment was on. "Page 14, Susan whispered. By the time Mrs. Brown got to Gail's desk, Gail had found the assignment on page 14 and had read half of it. "Gail, what are you doing?" Miss Brown looked warm and pleasant. "I'm reading the assignment. I want to read it and make sure I understand it before I start writing things down." "That's a good idea, Gail, but the assignment is on page 57. We did page 14 about a month ago." Gail looked at Susan. That little girl is going to get hers one of these days. Then she looked up at the teacher. "Mrs. Brown, I'm sorry, but I just can't do ninth grade work." After a long pause, Mrs. Brown said, "Gail, step into the hall, please." Gail entered the hall first. It was devoid of people except for Mr. Fussell, the hall monitor. "Why aren't you doing your work like the other students?" "What for? I'm going to fail no matter what I do." Gail knew from past experience that once a teacher decided that she was a hopeless case, the teacher would give up and let her sleep. She had nothing to lose by being completely and utterly honest. "I'm dumb." "Gail, why are you saying that? Sure, you failed the first 6 weeks, but that was because you didn't study. If you studied, you would do much better." "No, I wouldn't. I'm dumb, and that's why I always fail. Smart people like you don't understand that because you've never failed anything in your life." "Oh, I've had my share of failures, young lady." You actually failed something?" "Yes, I did. When I was in the 3rd grade, I made an F on a spelling test. The teacher made me take my paper home and have my mother sign it. I was so frightened. I just knew my mother would do some horrible, unspeakable thing to me." "What did she do?" "Well, instead of punishing me, she gave me a magic pencil, and she told me that if I studied really hard and used my magic pencil to take tests, I would never make another F." "Did it work?" "In my case, it did. I made my first and only F in the 3rd grade. Yeah, I guess you would have to be a 3rd grader to believe in magic pencils. Not a very smart 3rd grader, as a matter of fact. You would have to be stupid." Like many shy people, Gail found it easy to open up in one-on-one conversations. Although Mrs. Brown only had a 1.5 years worth of experience, her training had taught her that when shy children opened up, they sometimes tended to go too far. "That's enough, Gail." The young teacher managed a demeanor that was friendly and cordial, yet firm. "I hope you're not thinking about giving me a magic pencil." "Gail, everyone must believe in something. Now, if you won't believe in yourself, perhaps you can use a temporary crutch." Mrs. Brown went to her desk and came back with an olive green pencil and handed it to Gail. "Mrs. Brown, I'm telling you, unless it has answers written on it, this pencil isn't going to do me any good. Now remember, Gail, in order for this to work, you must study, and study hard." The next day, Gail walked into 3rd period English and took her seat before the tardy bell sounded. She took a brand new organizer out of a brand new book bag and started on her English assignment as soon as class began. About 30 minutes into the class period, she had finished the assignment for that day. She looked around and noticed that her classmates were still working. She was a little nervous at having finished so early. She glanced toward the teacher's desk and noticed Mrs. Brown looking at her. She felt that she was in trouble again, but for what? She hadn't done anything. Her big brown eyes showed signs of panic. "Gail, get whatever you've been working on and step into the hall, please." "Another hall talk? For what? I didn't do anything. I've been sitting here doing my work." Gail managed to pick up her organizer and follow Mrs. Brown into the hall without shaking. "You did say for us to do verb forms on page 62, didn't you?" Gail handed her work to the young teacher. Mrs. Brown examined the work carefully. Then she looked at Gail and smiled. "This is very good. Did you do it all yourself?" "Yes, ma'am, I did." "Gail, I called you out here because you looked a little distressed. Is everything all right?" Gail answered, "Yes, ma'am," immediately. Then after a long pause she added, "Last night I told my mother about your magic pencil story. I thought she would get a kick out of it, and she did at first. But then she said she couldn't believe you were still wasting time on me. She goes into this lecture routine about how I should be ashamed of myself, taking up class space for no apparent reason. While she was talking, I got something in my eye and tried to get it out by moving my eyeball back and forth. She accused me of rolling my eyes at her, and you know what she did? She killer grounded me. She took my phone, stereo, and TV, and then she told me I couldn't leave the house. This is like the granddaddy of all groundings. She took me shopping last night and made me spend my allowance on school stuff. She said she would unground me one step at a time. If I got a note from you saying I've made progress, I can get back the stereo Friday." The young teacher handed the papers back. "If you continue working like this for the rest of the week, I'll be happy to write your mother a note." Then she paused and lowered her head a little. "Gail, there is a test Friday. Please don't say I have to pass it. All I expect from you is for you to try. Now, in order for you to be on an even footing with everyone else, you're going to have to do some extra homework." "Life's just not going my way," Gail said, as she followed the teacher back into the room. Homework at the Yvette house was not a new concept. It was last tried when Gail was in the 4th grade. A teacher named Mrs. Brickbottom assigned 2 chapters to punish the class because somebody had stolen her master marker, and no one would tell who had done it. Gail sat at the kitchen table and started doing the work Mrs. Brown had assigned. It was so boring at first that she wondered how any human being could sit and do schoolwork. She suddenly realized that she could defy her mother and teacher by sitting there and daydreaming. Then she decided that defiance wouldn't be fair in this case, because they were just trying to help her. She decided to study for an hour and then daydream. When Friday finally came, Mrs. Brown handed out the test and told the students to begin. Gail held up the olive green pencil and smiled at Mrs. Brown. "I hope you won't be too disappointed when I fail," she whispered when the young teacher walked past her desk. When the last child finished taking the test, Brown said, "If you're quiet, I'll grade some of the papers now and tell you what you made by the end of class." Mrs. Brown sat at her desk and started grading papers. She graded Gail's paper first. The first 10 questions were multiple choice. Gail answered them correctly. This made Mrs. Brown happy. The next 10 were fill in the blank. Again, Gail answered them correctly. Mrs. Brown was still pleased, but becoming a little concerned. The last 5 questions were short answer. When she discovered that Gail had answered them correctly, also, she became very concerned. Had her meddling put so much pressure on the little girl that she had resorted to cheating? Mrs. Brown graded the rest of the papers, then called Gail to her desk. "Gail, I've graded your test." "I failed, didn't I?" "I told you, Mrs. Brown, no amount of studying is going to do me any good. I'm just dumb." Mrs. Brown surveyed the child carefully. There was nothing in her face or demeanor to indicate she had cheated. "Gail, you made 100. "You're kidding. This is another one of those teacher tricks." Mrs. Brown handed Gail her test and the answer key. After a few seconds, Gail said, "Oh my God, I passed. My mother's never going to believe this. She's going to think I cheated or something. This could lead to eternal groundation. This is worse than failing." "No, Gail. I'll call your mother tonight and tell her that I monitored the test and I did not see you cheat if she asks me about that. And as for you, you have proven that you can do the work. And now you expect me to make good grades all the time. I knew there was a downside." You don't have to make good grades all the time. Just do your best. In the weeks that followed, Gail's grades improved in her other classes too. After several days, she told Mrs. Brown, "My math teacher searched me today before she let me take her test. She changed my seat too. She thought I was a cheater because I was the only one to make 100 on her last test." Yes, Mrs. Brown was pleased. It seemed that Gail's self-confidence and academic performance was at an all-time high, until one day Gail came to her with a very perturbed look on her face. "Mrs. Brown, I've got a problem." "What is it, Gail?" "You know that magic pencil you gave me? It's down to the nub. I don't sharpen it very much, just enough so I can write with it. I've got a big history test tomorrow. What am I going to do?" Mrs. Brown realized that she was going to have to wean Gail from her reliance on magic pencils. But she didn't think that right before a big test was a good time. "Gail, come to my room tomorrow morning before school, and I'll see what I can do. And don't forget to study tonight." That evening after school, Mrs. Brown went to a nearby department store and bought a small box of olive green pencils. The next day, she gave the whole box to Gail. Then she went to see the guidance counselor and told him the whole story. "What should I do?" "Mrs. Brown, I think we should just let it ride for a while. Gail's grades are higher than they have ever been. Her whole attitude has changed. If I could get her teachers to reconsider her first 6 weeks' grades, she might make it to the top 10 this year." "But Mr. Winslow, she's relying on magic. What if she loses her pencils or forget to bring one to school on the day of a test? She would be demoralized. You should have seen her yesterday." "All right, Mrs. Brown. When this box of pencils you gave her runs out, we'll sit down together and tell Gail that her pencils aren't magic. Maybe by then, she would have experienced enough success that it won't matter." But the pencils didn't run out until the last 3 weeks of school. Gail was down to her last pencil, and there were 2 more sets of tests to take, the last chapter test and final exams. "In 2 weeks, Mrs. Brown said, you are all going to have to take final exams. Your English exam will contain 100 questions. This week, we are going to finish chapter 34, and next week, we are going to review for the exam." The day before the chapter 34 test, Susan Reynard was looking over her math homework when she noticed Gail talking to her pencil. "Gail, why are you talking to your pencil?" "I wasn't talking to my pencil, I was talking to myself." "Well, I've heard you talking to yourself before." Susan reached out her hand. "Can I see it?" "My pencil?" Gail hesitated. "It's just a regular old pencil." "What do you want to see it for?" Gail handed Susan the pencil. "This is an ugly green." Susan looked at the pencil, then turned to face Gail. "I've heard you talking to this pencil before. I've heard you say that it was a magic pencil." "Magic pencil?" Gail snarled. "What is this supposed to be? Some kind of stupid juvenile ridicule? Give me my pencil back." "Not until you tell me where you got it from. I haven't seen this kind of pencil in any of the stores." "I got it from Mrs. Brown. Now give me my pencil, please." "Most English teachers won't let you use pencils. They make you use pens." "That sounds like a personal problem to me. Now if you don't give me my pencil, I'm going to tell the teacher." Susan handed back the pencil. "I've noticed that every time you take a test, you use that pencil. Is it your lucky pencil or something?" "Yeah, you could say that. I'll trade you my pencil for it." "You must be kidding. What if I gave you $1 for it?" "Not for sale at any price." Susan didn't speak to Gail for the rest of the class period. She just watched and waited for the right time. Then she stole the pencil out of Gail's purse. Gail didn't realize that the pencil was missing until the next day, when it was time to take her Chapter 34 English test. Had she made this discovery in anyone else's class, she would have been scared out of her mind. But she felt Mrs. Brown would understand. She went to her. "Mrs. Brown, do you have a pencil I can borrow? You know, the green ones?" The young teacher looked toward Gail's desk and noticed that the girl had dumped everything out of her purse. Then she noticed the yellow number 2 pencil. "You have a pencil on your desk, Gail, but it's not a green one." "You mean magic?" "Yes." Mrs. Brown drummed her fingers against her desk. Then she said, "Gail, I think I may have done you a disservice by giving you that first pencil. It improved my grades. How is that bad? It has you believing in magic." "Magic? I don't believe in magic. I just think it's a lucky pencil. Bowlers have lucky bowling balls. I have a lucky pencil. There's nothing wrong with that. Bowlers use the same lucky ball all the time. But as you've discovered, after a few weeks, the pencils have to be replaced. What makes you feel that these pencils are lucky? Besides helping me to get good grades on tests, it is the pencil itself. It's very unusual. You can't buy that kind of pencil in a regular store. I've gone out looking." "You probably looked in the wrong place. It's a generic pencil. Very cheap. They're kept on the bottom shelf, toward the back. Mrs. Brown placed her hand on Gail's shoulders and looked into her eyes. Now I want you to go sit down and take your test using a standard number 2 pencil. And remember, the magic is in you. As Susan Reynard prepared to take the test, she glanced at Gail. She turned her body and leaned forward a little, trying to conceal her actions as she took the stolen green pencil out of her purse and gripped it with sweaty, shaky hands. She looked at the test. All 25 of the questions were multiple choice. Well, if nothing else I can guess, she thought to herself. She had studied hard the night before, and she recognized a question or two here and there. But for the most part, she was just guessing. She finished the test and turned it in. Then she whispered to the pencil, like she had seen Gail do so many times. If I pass this test, I'll believe in you. The teacher had the tests graded by the next day and handed them out. When she gave Susan her paper, Susan almost jumped out of her seat. Later that day in math class, Susan was getting gum out of her purse when Gail noticed the green pencil. You daughter of a warthog, you stole my pencil. No, I didn't steal it. I found it on the floor. Why didn't you give it back to me then? You knew it was mine. I've been meaning to. This is the first time I've thought about it since yesterday. Susan tried to hand over the pencil, but her hands wouldn't obey. All she could think about was how she had made 100 on the English test. She had never made anything higher than an 88 before. Gail, I want to buy this from you. I told you before, it's not for sale. Let's talk numbers, Gail. Would you take $5 for this ugly green pencil? Susan, you don't know what you did by taking my pencil in the first place. I could have died when I found it missing, and next week we have final exams. Okay, I double my offer to $10. $10. Gail's big brown eyes widened. Are we talking Hamilton? I don't know. Let me check. Susan took the money out of her purse. Yeah, this is Hamilton's picture. Gail took the money. You understand that this is a done deal? You won't come back tomorrow wanting your money back? I won't. About a week after school was out for the summer, Mrs. Brown received a phone call from the principal. He asked her to come to the school and meet with Susan Reynard's parents. She said she would be happy to meet with them, if it would do any good. The meeting started as soon as Mrs. Brown arrived. After the principal introduced everyone, he started questioning Mrs. Brown. Have you ever seen this pencil before? He held up an olive green pencil. I can't say that I'd seen that particular pencil before, Mrs. Brown replied. But I have seen pencils like it. I gave a box of them to one of my students. Were you aware that one of your students was selling these pencils for $10 apiece, claiming that they were magic pencils? No, I was not. I only gave these pencils to one student, and I don't think that she did it because she used up all the pencils during the second semester but one. And she lost it just before the last chapter test. I observed her taking her final exam with a yellow Faber-Castell numbered 2 pencil. Mr. Reynard shifted in his seat and cleared his throat. Are you saying that this student of yours took her final exams without the magic pencil? What kind of grade did she make? The principal answered the question. I took the liberty of pulling the other girls' records. I can't be specific, you understand. But I did notice that the lowest exam grade was 95. After a long pause, Mrs. Reynard spoke. We feel that our daughter should be allowed to retake her semester exams, because if this teacher hadn't gone around selling magic pencils, our daughter probably would have studied and passed. Mrs. Brown exhaled audibly and said, I think we should take a 5-minute break. Then she got up and left the room. 7 minutes later she came back in and sat down with renewed confidence. Mrs. Brown said, I've just gotten off the phone with Gail Yvette. Gail admitted to selling the pencil to Susan for $10. However, she said that Susan had made 3 other offers to buy. It was not until Susan made an offer of $10 that she was finally overcome by greed. She said she never told Susan that it was a magic pencil, and she never told her that I had ever said that there was anything magical about the pencil. The principal turned around in his seat so he could see Susan. Young lady, how did you get the idea that the pencil was magical? I heard Gail say it was. Mrs. Brown just said that Gail told her that she never told you that the pencil was magical. She was talking to the pencil. Before every test she would say, come on magic pencil, let me make 100. And she always made 100, so I figured the pencil must really be magical. And how does Mrs. Brown figure into all this? One day I asked Gail where she had gotten the pencil, and she told me she had gotten it from Mrs. Brown. The principal turned his attention to the 2 parents. Mr. and Mrs. Reynard, I can appreciate your concern for your daughter's apparent gullibility and lack of common sense. However, to try and blame the teacher for these shortcomings is untenable. You see, I too believe in magic. Not in magic pencils and the like, but in the magic of our teachers and our students. The grades will stand.